Representative Carter, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank both of you for being here. Governor LaJuan Grisham, good to see you again. We miss you up here. Governor Gordon, I want to ask you, according to the EPA, methane emissions associated with natural gas and oil production declined by 23% since 1990. This is a point that I don't think the oil and gas industry in the United States get credit for, is that really we have cleaned up the oil and gas here in our country, and it is much better and much cleaner than it was in years past, and I really think that we deserve to have credit for that. I would argue also that methane emissions are already effectively regulated by the EPA and by states under the framework for controlling emissions of volatile organic compounds. EPA found that required volatile organic compounds pollution controls also reduce methane emissions at the same time, making it clear that separate regulation of methane established no additional health protections and is thus unnecessary. In your testimony, Governor Gordon, you said, Wyoming does not need, nor do we welcome, an additional layer of federal regulation to regulate methane emissions. Does that mean that you agree that existing EPA regulations can reduce EPA emissions?
Ranking member and representative, thank you for that question. We believe that two things are really important. We've had an amazing reduction in emissions already with the EPA regulations in place. States like Wyoming and New Mexico have been able to sort of go beyond, and that without much detriment. We've done that with stakeholder agreement and actually support. The same is true of coal. Coal emissions have been reduced dramatically over the last several years. Wyoming boasts the Integrated Test Center, which is actually looking at what we can do to capture carbon and put it to useful products. All of these things are happening without increased regulation. And in fact, I think markets should drive this. And I don't mean investment markets, I think consumer markets. If consumers are truly interested and invested in seeing how carbon dioxide or methane can be reduced, let's build a market around that. Let's let the private sector deal with it.
Well, it certainly sounds like, by all accounts, that your state is doing a wonderful job, the state of Wyoming, and that you really don't need more federal regulations. Do you think that's the case for all states?
Thank you, Ranking Member and Representative Carter. Honestly, I think states, at this point we have a floor on the federal level, and states are allowed to build their own systems if they choose to do that. We've done that with both the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We've done that obviously now with carbon sequestration. This has given us an opportunity to be very competitive in the marketplace. So to answer your question directly, I don't really think we need additional federal regulation. We all understand what the circumstances are. Let's get out of the way and let industry deal with the problem.
Thank you, Governor. I could not agree more with you, and I really applaud your efforts and your attitude toward this and your approach to this. Let me ask you something about the future of using fossil fuels. You've directed your state to pursue a goal of net negative CO2 emissions and continue to use fossil fuels. And I think this is extremely important because I believe that we have to adopt all of the above type energy strategy. And again, as I stated earlier, I don't think that we get the credit here in the United States that we deserve for the decrease in emissions that we have achieved over the last decade. One of the facts that I use most often when we talk about this subject is the United States of America has decreased our carbon emissions more in the last decade than the next 12 countries combined. And we've done it without necessarily having to have the interference of EPA or the heavy hand of government to do it. It's if we would get out of the way and let the oil and gas industry just do what they do so well, I think we would be able to achieve that. Just very quickly, what do you think that we sacrifice by choosing to move on or ignore the abundant resource of fossil fuels that we have in this country?
Well, thank you, Ranking Member and Representative. Really, what we choose to ignore is the opportunity for new technology to show up. What we do in this country obviously should influence what happens elsewhere in the world. The best thing we can do to reduce carbon emissions, methane emissions, is to have our technology be the very best and be able to export it to places that perhaps can't meet that challenge right now. If we can reduce that on a global level, we will understand much better what our opportunities are to be able to address climate change.
Thank you, Governor, and I'll yield back.
Thank you. I want to